Most people who Google, "How much do I need to retire in the UK?" end up more confused and more scared than when they started. And honestly, that's not an accident. The numbers that get shared in the press are almost always the biggest, scariest version of the answer. Tonight, I want to show you why that question is actually the wrong one to ask. And by the end of this, you're going to know your number. And I'm willing to bet it's a lot lower than anything you've seen in a headline. Let's start with the thing nobody tells you. You don't have one retirement number. You actually have three. The Retirement Living Standards, set by the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association, outline three levels: minimum, moderate, and comfortable. Think of them as survival mode, normal life, and the dream. And here's why this matters right now. The latest figures say that a minimum retirement lifestyle is roughly £14,000 a year for a single person and about £22,000 for a couple. A moderate lifestyle is around £33,000 for one person and £45,000 for two, while a comfortable lifestyle is roughly £45,000 and £63,000. These are ballpark numbers, but they give us a useful map. So when a newspaper runs a headline saying, "You need £45,000 a year to retire," that's the comfortable level. That's the dream version. It includes regular holidays abroad, dining out when you feel like it, and treating yourself without thinking too hard. There's nothing wrong with aiming for that. But when normal people see that number and compare it to their pension pot, they panic and give up. And that is the real problem, because hitting the moderate level, which most people would genuinely be happy with, is a very different target. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is the thing that almost nobody talks about. There's already a massive head start built into the system that most people are completely ignoring. As of now, the full new state pension is worth around £240 a week, roughly £12,500 a year. That's nearly £13,000 a year already coming your way if you've built up your national insurance record. And when you hold that up against a minimum living standard of about £14,000 for a single person, the gap is only around £1,500 a year. For a couple where both partners get the full state pension, that minimum standard of roughly £22,000 is actually achievable with very little extra on top. So for the basics, your job isn't to fund all of retirement from your own savings. It's to top up what the state pension is already buying you. That reframe alone changes everything. Instead of staring down a £500,000 pot and feeling hopeless, you're looking at a gap, and gaps are much easier to close. And here's something I want you to hold on to because I'll come back to it later. There's one specific move that shrinks your required pot more than almost anything else. We'll get to that. But first, let's talk about something that makes most retirement calculators completely misleading. The idea that retirement spending is flat. It isn't. It comes in phases. In your early 60s, you're in what people call the go-go years. You're active, you're traveling, you're spending. Then in your 70s, you move into the slow-go years. Life is still good, but you naturally spend less. And by your 80s, the no-go years, spending typically drops again. Studies on retired households show that spending often falls by around 30 to 40% as people move from those early active years into later life. So if you plan as if every single year of retirement is a go-go year, if you assume you'll be spending £3,000 a month at 85, the same way you would at 63, you'll massively overestimate the pot you need. And you'll stay in work years longer than you actually have to. The number you're aiming for is almost certainly smaller than the one you've been told to chase. This brings me to something called the replacement rate. And once you understand this, the whole thing clicks into place. The idea is simple. You don't need to replace 100% of your working income in retirement, because a big chunk of what you earn right now goes on things that disappear when you stop working. The mortgage, the commute, pension contributions themselves, maybe the kids. Once those are gone, your actual cost of living drops significantly. A reasonable target for most people is somewhere around 60 to 70% of their current take-home pay. So if you're used to taking home £2,500 a month right now, a comfortable retirement might genuinely cost you £1,600 to £1,800 a month, not £3,000. That is a completely different target. And it's one that, when you actually run the numbers, a lot of people are much closer to than they think. Now, that move I mentioned earlier, the one that shrinks your retirement number more than anything else. Here it is, paying off the mortgage. There's an important detail buried in the retirement living standards. They don't build in housing costs. In effect, they assume that retired people will own their home outright and be mortgage-free. So think about what that actually means. If you're still paying £800 a month in mortgage payments in retirement, that's nearly £10,000 a year you need your pension to cover. Money that a mortgage-free person simply doesn't need. Over a 20-year retirement, that difference in required pot size is enormous. We're talking tens of thousands of pounds difference in what you actually need to have saved. For most people, the real retirement date is the day the mortgage disappears, not the day their pension pot hits some magic target. If you're sitting there wondering whether to overpay the mortgage or throw more into your pension, the answer isn't automatically the pension. Sometimes the most powerful retirement move you can make is the one that cuts your monthly costs at the other end. And while we're on the topic of what actually moves the needle, let's talk about contributions, because this is where people make a really common mistake. They wait until their 50s, panic, and try to save 20% or 25% of their income all at once. And that's brutal. It feels like punishment. But the maths of compound growth means that small increases in your 30s are worth far more than painful sacrifices later. A rough guideline that works well is to save roughly half your age as a percentage of your income, including whatever your employer puts in. So at 24, you're aiming for around 12%. At 36, around 18%. At 48, around 24%. Those numbers might sound like a lot if you're starting from scratch, but the key is that you don't have to jump there overnight. Every time you get a pay rise, bump your contribution by 2 or 3%. You barely feel it because your take-home is going up anyway. 2 or 3% more in your 30s can genuinely replace the need to make frantic, lifestyle-crushing sacrifices in your 50s. And if you're wondering how you're tracking right now, salary multiples are a useful way to check. By your mid-30s, you'd ideally have somewhere between 1 and 2 times your annual salary saved. By your early 40s, around 3 to 4 times. By your 50s, somewhere in the region of 5 to 7 times. But here's the thing. These are guidelines, not a pass-fail exam. Being behind doesn't mean you'll never retire. It often just means you've been aiming at the comfortable level without realizing it. If you shift your target to the moderate level, tweak your contributions, and maybe make 1 or 2 of the moves we've talked about, you're back in the game faster than you'd think. Now, here's one that surprises people. Research into retirement happiness suggests that many of the happiest retirees cluster around what most of us would call a normal income, somewhere in the region of about £1,700 a month. Not the dream figures, not the headline numbers. Normal. Because beyond a certain point, more money in retirement doesn't actually make people meaningfully happier. What matters is having enough to feel free and secure, and that level is lower than most people assume. Chasing a massive retirement income can make your working life genuinely miserable, for almost no extra happiness once you get there. And speaking of getting there earlier, there's one more thing that almost nobody factors in, and it can knock years off your working life. A small side income in early retirement is extraordinarily powerful. Think about doing a day or two a week of something you actually enjoy: consulting, a hobby that earns, a bit of part-time work. Even £500 a month of income in the early years of retirement means your pot doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting straight away. That £500 a month, £6,000 a year, can reduce the pot you need by tens of thousands of pounds, depending on how you model it out. You don't have to flip from 5 days a week to 0. Going from 5 days to 2 days is often enough to retire years earlier than you thought possible. So let's bring this all together, because I promised you a way to actually find your number. And here's how to do it properly. Stop starting from how much do I need and start from what does a perfect week at 65 actually look like for me? Be specific. Write it down. What do you do on a Tuesday morning? Where do you go on holiday? Do you have a car? Are you eating out twice a week or twice a month? Then price that week up. Multiply it out. And then compare it to the income you'll already have coming in. State pension, any defined benefit pensions, any rental income, and look at the gap. If you're a homeowner who'll be mortgage-free by retirement, that gap is probably smaller than you think. If you're on an average UK salary, the moderate standard of living is a genuinely achievable target, not a fantasy. And if you're a late starter, say you're in your 40s and feel like you've missed the boat, you haven't. The combination of the state pension doing a lot of the heavy lifting, a mortgage that's getting closer to paid off, and even a small side income in the early years can completely change the picture. The scary number you've seen in the news, that's someone else's dream. Your number, the one that funds a real, enjoyable, genuinely comfortable life, is almost certainly lower than that. If this changed how you're thinking about retirement, drop a comment below and tell me where you think you are right now: minimum, moderate, or comfortable target. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me make the videos that are actually useful to you. And if you want to go deeper on how to actually build the pot, how to pick the right pension, how to invest it, and when to start drawing it down, that video is right here. Go watch it next.